The preposition over. Let's see. So we're going to discuss today this article. I'm sorry that I didn't send you the article as I usually do. I will create the corresponding page on our website for this material later on. But this is the article that from which I will draw all the examples and all the remarks that I will lay out today. So Cognitive Topology and Lexical Networks by Claudia Brueggemann and George Lakoff from University of California, Berkeley. For those of you who probably don't know what topology means, here's the definition. It is the study of geometric properties and spatial relations unaffected by the continuous change of shape or size of figures. Second entry, the way in which constituent parts are interrelated or arranged. For instance, the topology of a computer network. This article appeared in 1988 in this book, Lexical Ambiguity Resolution, Perspectives from Psycholinguistics, Neuropsychology, and Artificial Intelligence. So this is the article, Cognitive Topology and Lexical Networks. And the problem is given in section 3, which I want to show you now. To get some sense of the problem, let us consider a handful of the senses of over. So there are many different senses of the preposition over. Let's see some of them. The painting is over the mantle. The plane is flying over the hill. Sam is walking over the hill. Sam lives over the hill. The wall fell over. Sam turned the page over. Sam turned over. She spread the tablecloth over the table. The guards were posted all over the hill. The play is over. Do it over, but don't overdo it. Look over my corrections and don't overlook any of them. You made over 100 errors. So these are all different uses of the word or the preposition over. They are different one from the others. And this is the first schema. Remember that we talked about schematization some time ago. And this is the first schema for the first example that is under discussion, which is the plane flew over. So what we're looking at right now is that the TR stands for or means trajectory in Langaker's terms and in other cognitive linguistics researchers' terms. Trajectory is simply the object or person or entity or thing that is moving. And the landmark is simply the reference point or the space or something in the space that serves as a referent to realize that there is something moving. So the plane moves in relation to something else that is the landmark. And we have this arrow showing the direction of the movement. The plane flew over. And this is what we're going to call schema 1. This is going to be our first schema. This geometric figure above symbolizes anything in the world that moves. And the square symbolizes anything in the world that is not moving, but serves as the referent in order to be able to know that the trajectory is moving in reference to the landmark. So we already discussed schematization some time ago. So just let me give you a little reminder that thing is very general, it's very schematic. Creature is also very general, but less general than thing. But creature is more schematic than animal. Animal is more schematic than dog, and dog is more schematic than poodle. So what we have here is basically a continuum from very highly schematic to much more specific on the right side. The same goes for verbs. We have very schematic verbs such as the verb do. There are many, many different actions in the world that can be set as things that we do. But then as we run along this continuum, there are other actions that are much more specified. Fling is something we do, but the specification of what exactly it is that we're doing is much more specific. Um, Also, remember that conceptual categories can intersect, that we have these middle zones where we are not very sure if an object is, in this example, a cup or a bowl. And also, we have to bear in mind that some members of each category are more central. So the one in the middle I'm showing on the left side is more central. It's more prototypical of the category cups, whereas the other one on the right side is a more prototypical or typical exemplar of that category, bowls. And that also can be applied to grammatical constructions. So we have, for instance, going to, that prototypically is associated with plans and intentions. I gave you another proposal when we talked about this, but I'm going to keep this one right now because it's the one that most of you are familiar with. And for will, we have the descriptors or characteristics or prototypical meanings of will, which are spontaneous decisions and predictions. And we have some middle ground constructions such as, or uses such as requests, refusals, offers, invitations, schedule arrangements, and facts. Well, I was showing you the first, okay, this is the first schema. This is a schema number 1. But we're going to go through a lot of these schemata, a lot of schemas. So the one that I showed you as schema number 1 is here in the middle, but we have to take into account that the preposition over has many other different uses. Of course, the prototypical use of over is the one that is called number 1 here. But we have other examples such as this one. The bird flew over the yard. So the difference is that you remember that we had a landmark, which was, so to speak, so to say, very small. But now the landmark is much longer. A yard is much longer than a square, as in the first example, in the first schema. So we're going to call this schema 1X and C. It doesn't really matter right now what X or NC stands for. What's important is that we have a different variation of the first schema. And so this schema 1X and C is going to be here. You can see it in the middle below the first schema 1. We have 1X and C. And then we have another here. And then we have two other schemas, two other schemata. We have schema 1.vx and C. Don't worry about the meaning of Vx and C. What's important is that you should notice that this is different from the other schemas. The plane flew over the hill. Now the landmark is not flat. There is a sort of bump, which is the hill. So the plane flew over the hill is different from the bird flew over the yard, or the plane simply flew over. So this is the one we're going to call V1, Vx, and C. And then we have another different case in which we say, we have this example, the bird flew over the wall. The landmark is different because now it is not a hill. It is not flat, but it's not a sort of elongated bump. It is one thin landmark. It is not flat, but it is not very elongated as the one above. And we're going to call this other one 1V and C. And so with that, we have already covered 1X and C, 1VX and C, and 1V and C. Yeah, we have already covered number 1 and the 3 that are below. But there are more. So let's see. Sam drove over the bridge. So this is schema 1XC. This is different because now the trajectory is not far above the ground. In the other ones, the trajectory, which is either a plane or a bird, is very far above the ground. It is, you could say, in the sky. But here, somebody driving over the bridge is not far above in the sky or too far away from the ground. But we can also make a variation of that, because here over is being used over a flat surface, whereas in 18.6, we have a sort of bumpy terrain, which is a hill. So Sam walked over the hill is different from Sam drove or walked over the bridge. These are two different ways of schematizing, of understanding and using the preposition over. So with that, with one XC and one VXC, we can expand our general organization of different lexical meanings. Remember, this is a lexical network. So we have one XC, one VXC here, which are the ones that I just showed you. Next example, Sam climbed over the wall. This is different because if you compare here, there is no obstacle. We did have something similar here, but the bird didn't have to do anything to the wall, or the wall is only the landmark here. But in this case, the wall, you could say, is an obstacle. So Sam climbed over the wall means that Sam has to make an effort to somehow climb over the wall. So that's one VC, which is shown right over here. So you can see that we're little by little expanding the different schemas or schemata. You can use both schemas or schemata as you wish. But they all center around the prototype, which was our first schema. These are just variations of the first schema. Next case. What about Sam leaves over the hill? Let me ask somebody, just to make this a little bit more interesting and engaging. Letty, what do you think is different in this example from all the previous examples?
Hi, teacher.
Hi, Letty.
I'm not wearing my glasses, so I'm a little bit blind.
Excuse me?
Hmm?
You said something that I didn't understand very well, sorry.
I'm not wearing my glasses, so I'm a little bit blind.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you put the pictures again, please?
Yeah.
I have
Okay.
such a bad
Yeah.
view.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Very quickly, let me run
Okay.
through. Yeah. So you have this one. The bird flew over the yard. The plane flew over. The bird flew over the yard. I'm repeating some of them. I'm sorry, but the plane flew over the hill. The bird flew over the wall. Sam drove over the bridge. Sam walked over the hill. Sam climbed over the wall. And now Sam lives over the hill. So what do you think is the difference between all the ones that were shown before and this one?
I think this is a little bit more like curved than the others, and it has different shape. I think it's the others are in the top or are not really pointed, but this is clear and this is like a circle. Not all complete circle, like a semicircle, but it's curves than the others.
All
I
right.
think.
So you're referring to the bumpy hill, right? The hill as a bumpy,
Yes.
you're calling it curvy, and yeah, that's another way of describing it. Yeah, but that actually is present in other examples, such as this one. Sam walked over the hill, and the plane flew over the hill. So that's not actually the big difference. The big difference is that in this example that we are discussing right now, the difference is that the trajectory, the entity or thing that is moving, Sam, is not moving. He's not moving at all. in all the previous examples that I showed you, there is something or somebody moving. The bird flew over is moving. The plane flew over is moving. The bird flew over is moving. The plane flew over the hill is moving. The bird flew over the wall is moving. Sam drove over the bridge is moving. Sam walked over the hill is moving. Sam climbed over the wall is moving. But here, Sam leaps over the hill is not moving. That's the most important difference. And we're going to call this schema 1VXCE. That is here on the right side. You can see it here, 1VXCE. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to analyze all the different schemas that the preposition over is used with. So let's see another different example.
Okay.
Yeah, Sausalito is over the bridge. So this is a little bit different. They are very similar, except that Sam lives over the hill, presents Sam as somebody who is separated from me on the left. There is a separation between here and I, caused by a hill, which is not flat. It's the opposite of flat. But here, there's really nothing. There is not this bumpier hill or curvy terrain or ground that comes in the way between me and Sausalito. So this is different, very similar, and we're going to call this one 1XCE, which is here. So we already have 1XCE and 1VXCE to join the family of different uses of the preposition over. Now, all of these are 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So these are all examples of the, you could say sub-examples or types of examples or more specific examples of the schema number 1. But we have a second schema, which is this one that is here, the above sense. Over has a stative sense, in the sense of being static, but above, because the plane and the bird and Sam climbing over the wall are moving either above or on the ground, but they're moving. But in this example, there is something above that is not moving. For example, hang, please, the painting over the fireplace. So you want to put a painting somewhere over the fireplace, which means the fireplace, by the way, is the landmark, and the painting is the trajectory. The painting is the object that we are talking about, and the fireplace is our reference point. And so in this case, what's interesting is that the trajectory or the painting is above, but it is not moving. The bird was moving, the plane was moving, but the painting is not moving. It is above, as the bird and the plane were above, far away in the sky, but in this case it is above, not very far away, but it is above, but it's not moving. So over has a stative sense with no path. There is no trajectory, as in the examples, all the other examples that we were taking a look at. It is roughly equivalent in meaning to above. So hang the painting over the fireplace is an example of schema number 2, which is located right over here on the left side where I am moving my cursor. Next example, the power line stretches over the yard. This is different. Let me ask somebody else. Teacher Raimundo, what do you think about this one? What's the difference between the power line stretches over the yard and the painting is over the fireplace? What do you think is the difference?
Well, the object is not necessarily exactly above the landmark, but but it reaches even farther. Here we can see that. Oh my God, I cannot make any changes on the slide. Oh, I have the option to draw, but anyway, on the other one, on the previous one, we could see that the what is TR? I can't remember the trajectory. Yeah, the trajectory.
The trajectory, yeah.
Yeah, the trajectory is right above the landmark, but in this one, it is above the landmark, but it's expanding even beyond.
Yeah.
So it doesn't it refers only that the state that it is above.
Yeah.
Not exactly, but it's remarking that it is above.
Yeah. That's the difference. That the trajectory here is not very long. In fact, in this specific case, it is very probably smaller than the landmark, and it is not stretched. That's the difference. That this one is stretched. It is elongated. It extends from well, in the case of a power line, it begins from very far away, and it stretches also very far away. So that's the basic difference, that we have this schema number 2, the basic schema number 2, that simply tells us that there is a trajectory, but we don't specify what type of trajectory. It is very, very schematic, but here we're specifying a little bit more the nature of the trajectory, which is a trajectory that is very, very long. So that's the one we're going to call schema number 2.1 DTR. Don't pay attention to these numbers. It doesn't really matter. We're just trying to make a sort of classification that makes sense. And so 2.1 DTR is right over here as a special case of schema number 2. But now we have a third, number 3, a third different type of schema, which is described by Bruchman and Lakoff as the covering senses. Let me read the introduction to this third type of schema. There is a group of schemas for over that have to do with covering. This group is linked to the grid of figure 18.15 in two ways. A previous figure, this is 16. The basic covering schema is a variant of schema number 2, where the trajectory is at least two-dimensional and extends across the boundaries of LM. I think the drawing is very clear. You have these two-dimensional, that's what's most important, that this is a two-dimensional. Of course, that's more specific than number 2. Number 2 didn't specify at all. A line would be considered one-dimensional in this context of discussion, but this one is two-dimensional. The board is over the hole. So try to imagine a hole that you want to cover with a board. So that's what you do. So you have the trajectory, which is above, and the hole that is below, and the trajectory is covering the hole. And this is a schema number 3. And that's above here. You can see that we have schema number 1, schema number 2, and schema number 3 above here. So let's see what else we can say about this schema. So let me read. There are two differences between schema 2 and schema 3. The first is that schema 2 is unspecified. There is not much specification, or not really, it's very schematic. For the dimension of the trajectory, well, schema 3 must be at least two-dimensional, but while schema 2 requires non-contact, schema 3 is neutral with respect to contact, allowing either contact or lack of it. So here are the two schemas below, schema number 2 and schema number 3. So here it is above, but we didn't really discuss if there was if it was two-dimensional or not. And it doesn't really matter if there is sort of covering as the one that we're looking at in schema number 3. And let's keep in mind that it says here, while schema 2 requires non-contact, schema 3 is neutral. It can have contact or not. Okay, let's see. So that's our schema number 3, but you can notice that we have a lot of other different variations of schema number 3. We have schema 3PE, 3MXP, MX, RO, PERO, MXPRO, and MXRO. Don't get hooked with these numbers and letters, which are meant only to serve for classificatory purposes. What's important is that we have different. What's important is that we have all these different schemata. So let's see. The city clouded over. So the clouds begin to move above the city, and we say in English, the city clouded over. So you can imagine the clouds as the trajectory, a very big trajectory, and the city is the landmark, a very big landmark, and the clouds start moving from somewhere. We don't know where, but it doesn't really matter. And they start coming to the city. So we say that the city clouded over. And here over is being used in the sense that there is this sort of two-dimensional or three-dimensional entity that comes and covers, in this case, the city. And that's what we call schema 3PE. And that is right here, 3PE. So we have schema number 3 and schema 3PE, which is simply path endpoint. Figure 1818, this is different. The guards were posted all over the hill. So try to imagine the police or military people, I don't know, guards that are spread all over a hill, which is what we're looking at in this drawing, on this drawing. So over here is different from over, the use of over that we are observing here. Let me ask somebody what the difference. I think it's pretty obvious, but I just want to have more interaction with you all. Let's see. Monse, what do you think?
Well, I think it's like referring about the difference between the clouds and this one.
Yeah, yep.
Well, I think well, it's like covering, and it's were posted all over the hill.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like mentioning like covering, and the other it's more like a movement.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Like a
Yeah.
motion.
Yeah. You are very, very right to point out that here we have this arrow showing that the clouds were not over the city, but now they have moved over the city. That's one first difference. And another difference is that here the concept or entity clouds is treated as one single entity, which is all tied together. But here, the guards are separated, the ones from the others. They don't make up a sort of mass as the clouds. The clouds are, so to speak, condensed into one single entity. But here the guards, they do make up a single general entity, but as individuals, they are separated, the ones from the others. So the guards were posted all over the hill is different from the city clouded over. I didn't put an example here that I like very much, which is something about specs, you know, pecas. Some people have these little dots on the face, specs. And I don't remember the example very well, but that's an example in which we are using this schema number 3, MX. MX stands for multiplex, but don't worry about that terminology. The point is that you have a lot of, or many, or whatever, a number of different entities that are spread all over a certain landmark, in this case, a hill. So the guards were posted all over the hill. It's different from the city clouded over. So schema 3PE is different from schema 3MX. And so here we have schema number 3, which is the most schematic of its kind. But then we are specifying a little bit more with 3PE and 3MX. So this is 3PE and 3MX, 3PE and 3MX. But now we want to discuss 3MXP, yeah, which is this one. So we have here a third, more specific type of schema number 3. I walked all over the hill. Let me ask somebody else. Teacher Mary Kristen, what do you think about this one? What is the difference between this schema 3 MXP and this one and this one?
Okay, hello everyone.
Hello.
Yes, okay, let me see. I am wearing my glasses as well.
Yeah.
Yes, we have seen that there is a difference when there is movement and no movement.
Yeah.
So, well, the first issue here, well, it's very clear there in figure 1819. I walked all over the hill that I am moving, you see, because of the line that is showing me, versus the other one where the guards are, they are completely standing up. They are not moving at all.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that could be one difference. And so, and well, in this case, it has all over. And that little word, all, makes a difference as well, okay? Because maybe I couldn't say the city clouded all over. That wouldn't be logical. So the adjective all, it's important here, okay? But I could say that the big difference is the movement here. Then there is very, very clear because of the line that we have there. And in that one, the one about the guards, that is completely, they are not moving. Now, my question would be, in the last one there, that one, where is the entity, the one entity? I don't think we have a one entity, like you said, that we had clouded. In the example clouded, there was only one entity, that the clouds were one single, one object, let's say, one big object, but only one. And in here, we don't have one, we don't even have an object, okay? Well, that's what I can figure out, but I really don't know if I am right or not.
Yeah. Just to answer your last question, teacher. Yeah, the entity is myself, because that's the subject. I walked all over the hill, but of course you could change the entity. I don't know, the dog or the cat walked all over the hill, or I don't know, the car moved all over the, well, that'd be kind of strange, but yeah, you could change the entity. And
okay.
Yeah, and one more thing to consider is that here you have multiple entities. You have many different entities, many
yes.
Yeah, and they are basically occupying one space at one time. They're not moving. But here, yeah, you have one entity, which is myself, at different places at different times. So that's that's in fact the most important difference here, that this drawing is showing the trajectory or the path that the person follows, but it doesn't mean that I am covering all the place in one single time. It is the summary or the addition of all the different moments from moment to moment that make it
Yeah.
feel, that make it feel as if I were covering the surface. Yeah, you were going to say something, teacher.
No, well, it is that that you, yes, I figured that out, that that I am the entity, because, well, the subject is very clear there, is very clear. But in the other example, let me see which one. No, 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 that one is very clear. No, no, in your diagram, the one with all the lines and names and
Oh,
that. I
this one.
want to see where we are in this last
Oh.
example.
Yeah, this one is 3MXP right here, where I am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that I don't know who did that one. Who is the author of that diagram?
Yep.
But it's an, well, remember that I am a mathematician, and
Yep.
in my opinion, that's an excellent diagram with all the uses of over that there are, giving each use a specific place in a very clear diagram. It's not clear. It's not easy. It's
Yeah.
not easy. It's too complicated.
Yeah.
Okay, and but it seems that they found a place for each use of over, and that's a wonderful thing. Really,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. I like it very much.
Yeah. This was most probably drawn by Bruchman and Lakoff, the authors of the article that we are discussing.
Yeah.
And yeah, this diagram, well, I'm going to call it a diagram, even though the official name is a figure. But it is metaphorical. It is a metaphor of a network. Ultimately, what a network is, well, it is a number of connections in the brain. You remember that we had this discussion about the way our brains are structured, and
Yeah.
yeah, try to think about it that way. If you ever wonder, these drawings are just metaphors for something that is much more complicated, which is the brain. But they are very helpful because they allow us to get an idea that different meanings are organized around networks, and that's what we're trying to come to or arrive at, which is the fact that the different uses of the preposition over are not random. There is some, so to speak, order. Of course, I'm using the word order in a very let's say relaxed way, because, well, what do you call order? But that's the idea.
Yes, I agree. Well, that's why I like this, and I would call it really a diagram more than a figure.
Yeah.
Because it gives for each meaning. We can even count how many meanings the word order, the word over has.
Yeah.
We can even count that in each one of the corners where they place the letters, the numbers, and everything. Now, could you remind me what is number one?
Oh yeah, number one is the most schematic.
The most common.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, this one. So what is the meaning of over? What does every single instantiation or example of over share with every other single instantiation or example of over? What every single use of over shares with every other use of over is that you have a landmark and you have a trajectory. One is somewhere
Okay.
separated
Yes.
from the landmark.
Which could be, let's say, the most common.
Yeah. I like to think about this because I do ask myself constantly what the neurological in the brain reality is. And I think that this is what we call long-term potentiation. We could discuss that some other time, but basically long-term potentiation means that neurons that fire together, wire together. That's what they say in cognitive
Uh-huh.
neuroscience, that the more often certain neurons connect with each others, the more they communicate, the stronger the connections become. So I could say that this is the strongest neurological connection in our brains for the preposition over, which is, but because it's the one that is shared by all the other. Oh, by the way, these circles represent a different metaphor from this. These are all visual metaphors in order to try to understand the very complex nature of the brain. So this is one metaphor, but you can think of number one as the center here. And you can think about number two as, I don't know, maybe this region over here. And you can think
Okay.
of number three as probably
Yes.
region over a region over here. It starts to become more weird, more marginal.
No, but you know, it's a different way to let's say explain it.
Yeah.
With circles, with even different colors,
Yeah.
which go from the darkest to the lighter.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the different circles, but it's understandable. It's very understandable that form to explain it. However, it wouldn't be so precise as this one, figure 1827. I
Yeah.
think this one is more precise what they are trying to say. Of course, we would have to see the meaning of each of the letters there and
Yeah.
the numbers in a list, so we could understand, and even an example, so we could understand all the diagram there. But that's very interesting. I like it. I like that.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, by the end of today's meeting, I will show you the article, precisely to let you know that there is a very, very beautiful, exquisite explanation throughout the article of every single example. I am going very fast because we only have 100 minutes. But if you take the time to read the article later, you will find beautiful explanations for each example that I am discussing in only 30 seconds, more or less. Yeah, let's continue with the following, the rest of the examples or instantiations or types of schemas.
Yes, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
No, thank you, teacher. And before I continue, I do want to add to what teacher Mary Kristen was saying about this diagram, that the next examples that I am going to show you are simply variations of the 4 examples or schemas that we have already discussed. So the ones that are above are the same as the ones that are below, but the difference is that the ones above have rotation. So 3PE, rotation, 3 rotation, 3MX, rotation, 3MXP, rotation. So let's see what we mean by rotation here. So the covering schemas all have variants in which the trajectory need not be above, that is, higher than the landmark. So what are some examples of 3PE, 3MX, and 3MXP in which the trajectory is not necessarily above? And I should have underlined above, because look, we have this example. There was a, oh, I forgot how to pronounce this, veil, I think, veil over her face. As the rain came down, it froze and ice spread all over the windshield. There were flies all over the ceiling. The spider had crawled all over the ceiling. So here, the difference is that with above, the examples that we have checked, the last 4 examples are examples in which something is above vertically. But here, for example, the veil is not above my head or the head of this woman. You could say that it is in front of her, so to speak. When we say that the veil was over her face, you are not trying to say that the veil was floating above her head or suspended somewhere above her head. What you're saying is that it is covering her face. You could, so to speak, horizontally. I don't know how to say this. It's different because in all the other ones, there was this sort of line from left to right, and then, so to speak, and then something above. But here it is, you could say, in front of the person, in front of the landmark. The landmark is the face, the veil is the trajectory. So the veil was all over or over her face. Next one. As the rain came down, it froze and ice spread all over the windshield. So one more time, the topological organization is different because this is somewhere in the middle. It's not exactly in the X to X axis. It's not exactly on the Y to Y axis, you know, geometric coordinates. This is a sort of diagonal disposition. So that's what we mean by rotation. Rotation doesn't mean that it has to fully rotate. It only means that it has rotated some to a certain extent. To what extent? Well, that depends on how you use the word over with these different meanings. Here is another example. There were flies all over the ceiling. So here, you wouldn't say that the flies are above the ceiling. You could try to say that they are below the ceiling, but we are not trying to discuss today the preposition below. We're trying to discuss the preposition over. And what's is interesting is that in all the previous examples, the trajectory was above somewhere, either making contact or not, but it was above that landmark. But now they are, you could, so to speak, they are below. So there is some rotation. That's what we mean by rotation. Another example, I'm sorry if you are arachnophobic. I hope nobody is an arachnophobic. But in this example, the spider had crawled all over the ceiling. Once again, we have rotation because the object or the trajectory, the entity, the thing, the spider is not exactly above the ceiling. It is, so to speak, under the ceiling, but we're not concerned with the preposition under today. We are concerned with over, and over is being used in this sort of rotated meaning. The spider had crawled all over the ceiling. We will refer to these rotated schemas, though with no suggestion that there is actual mental rotation degree by degree involved. It's not, Bruchmann and Lakoff are not claiming that in my head I am doing any mental rotation. It's just the way we use, it's just different schemas. One might suggest that instead of a rotation from the vertical, there is simply a lack of specification of orientation. And that's what we get here. So you have 3PE and you have a 3PE rotated. You have a normal 3 and you have a 3 rotated. You have a 3MXP and you have a 3MXP rotated. And you have a 3MX and you have a 3MX rotated. How much it has rotated doesn't really matter. It could be 35 degrees, 39 degrees, 135 degrees. That doesn't really matter. What's important is that these are variations. These are variations of the basic schemas that we discussed at first when we started discussing schema number 3. Let me read this above because I think it helps. We will add RO to the names of the unrotated covering schemas to yield names for the corresponding covering schemas. The rotated covering schemas have the following names, which I already read: 3RO, 3PRO, 3MXRO, and 3MXPRO. Figure 18.20 is a diagram indicating the links among the covering schemas and the links to the other over schemas. And figure 18.21 indicates the overall linkage among the schemas discussed so far. Well, I'm not showing 18.21 right now, but it doesn't really matter. What's important is that you should by now notice that we have these quite complex internal organization, architecture of the preposition over with a very interesting, exquisite lexical network. I'm using the word lexical, even though preposition is considered grammatical element, because we already discussed that there are middle regions from lexical to grammatical patterns. Now we have a reflexive schema. This is a little bit more difficult, but I'll do my best to explain this. So let's see what we mean by reflexive schemas. In order to discuss reflexive schemas, we have to turn our attention for one moment to the preposition out, which is different from the preposition over. But you will see why it is helpful to discuss the preposition out for 5 minutes. Let's see. Perhaps the most remarkable of the discoveries made by Linder was the discovery of reflexive trajectories. The concept can be illustrated most simply using the example of out. The simplest use of out occurs in cases like Harry ran out of the room. So the room is a landmark, Harry is a trajector, and so Harry, or the trajector, runs out of the room. That's the basic schema of out. The out has as its most basic schema, the one that we're looking at right now. We can represent this by the schema in figure 18.22. Harry ran out of the room. Now, in this diagram, the one that we just discussed, the diagram, the room, is the landmark, the container is the landmark, the room, and the trajector, Harry, moves from the interior to the exterior of the room. But this schema won't do for cases of out, like the syrup, or syrup, I don't remember, sorry. The syrup spread out. The pass, which is like a mob or a group of people, spread out. They stretched out the taffy, a sort of candy, so to speak. We rolled out the carpet. Let me explain in more detail why these are examples that cannot be described or accounted for using the basic schema of the preposition out. Here, the syrup spread out. So here, the preposition out is not really, well, it is coming out of it is coming out of the, what is that, the sort of cup or whatever it is called. But once it touches the pancake, it is spreading out on the pancake. So that's why out cannot be explained as an example in terms of how it is spreading out as an example of the basic schema of out. The pass is spread out, a group of people. I'm sorry for the bad word. It's the only example that I could find on the internet of a GIF picture that has motion or movement. So the pass is spread out. Spread out cannot be explained using the basic schema of the preposition out. It is a different use of the preposition out because they are not really moving out of a container, but we are using the preposition out in a certain sense. They stretched out the taffy. These are the examples that I was able to find on the internet. And so one more time, out is not really we're using the preposition out in a sense that doesn't mean that the taffy is inside a container. And last example, we rolled out the carpet. One more time, the carpet is not inside a container, a room, a container, but we are using the preposition out, and we all understand what it means here, but it's not the basic schema of the preposition out that we discussed, that I showed at first. So we rolled out the carpet. So that's a problem. How do we solve this problem? Well, according to Bruchman and Lakoff, Lindner, 1981-1982, proposes this. Let me read. Here, the relevant trajectories are the syrup, the pus, the taffy, and the carpet, but they are not moving out with respect to any other landmark. Take the case of syrup. Pour some syrup on the table. It will have a certain outer boundary at first. Imagine that this is the syrup here, but the boundary moves. So yeah, ignore the cup that I was showing you. Think about the syrup spreading out. Pour some syrup on a table, it will have a certain outer boundary at first, but the boundary moves. Some of the syrup that was inside the initial boundary is now outside that initial boundary at, I don't know, second number 2, second number 3, second number 4, etc. The syrup, or at least part of it, is moving out relative to its own prior boundary. That's why it is called reflexive. I forgot. Yeah, reflexive schema. It's a reflexive schema because it is moving out relative to its own prior boundary. We can schematize this in figure 18.23, the syrup spread out. And well, I'm not going to read everything here, but that would explain also the examples: roll the log over, turn the paper over, but those are somewhat more specific examples. Both of these examples that I just showed, the roll the log over and turn the paper over, are examples, are variations on schema 1, but they differ only in that the landmark is equal to the trajectory. It's a reflexive use of the preposition over. Yeah, because here we were discussing out, right? So once that we have the concept of reflexive schema applied to the preposition out, so we have the syrup spread out, the pus spread out, they stretched out the taffy, and we rolled out the carpet. We can use the concept of a reflexive schema in order to talk about the preposition over. Roll the log is tronco, you know, over, and turn the paper over. So both of these are variations of schema number 1, but they differ in that the landmark is equal to the trajectory. It's a reflexive schema in the way that we just discussed. So the trajectory is equal to the landmark, and that is schema number 4. Here, yeah. So number 4 is here. Number 4 for reflexive path, for RFP. Now, we have other examples, such as these ones. The fence fell over. In Spanish, we would say se cayó la barda, I think. That's why it's difficult to translate these examples into Spanish, because our schemata, our schemas in Spanish are different. The internal architecture, the internal semantics of the preposition over is very, very, well, I'm probably exaggerating. Let's just keep it that. It's different from the internal schematization of Spanish prepositions. So in Spanish, we have to manipulate the meaning a lot. So how do you translate? Yeah, I think I could ask you all. Teacher Laura Osiris, what do you speak Spanish? I don't remember. There was somebody who was from the US who didn't speak Spanish. Are you there, Teacher Laura? Well, meanwhile, I can ask Teacher Patty, how do you translate into Spanish the fence fell over?
Exacto, la barda se cayó.
All right, all right. Yeah, thank you, teacher. Does anybody have any other suggestion? Does anybody have, oh, Teacher Laura is there.
Yes, I'm thinking the same. The fence over is la barda se cayó.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
translating it that way. Yes.
yeah. It's difficult to find another translation, right? That somehow respects the internal semantics of the preposition over. If somebody has another proposal that conserves or preserves more of the original meaning of the preposition over, I would like to know. But in principle, it is interesting to notice that in this particular example, it is quite difficult to arrive at a translation in Spanish that fully reflects the internal semantics of the preposition over. So the fence fell over, or Sam knocked over the lamp, are examples that follow schema number 4, RFP, reflexive path, which is shown here as something that is standing and then falls over or is knocked over. So that is schema number 4, RFP. Now we have other uses, such as the dog jumped over the fence. So let me read. In this case, there is a vertical landmark and the path of the trajectory both begins and ends on the ground. This results in a semicircular path. If we take the reflexive transform of this schema, letting TR equal to LM, we get the schema of figure 18.25. 18.25 is not this one, it is this one. So here, Bruckmann and Lakoff are simply explaining where this schema, so to speak, comes from, or what it relates to, how it is connected to the other schemas. Thus, schema for RFP has close links to two other schemas. This is a schema that we already discussed before, and it is being shown here only to explain better the nature of schema for RFP. But this is schema 1B and CG that we already discussed at the beginning. Now we have another schema, which Bruckmann and Lakoff call the excess schema. When over is used as a prefix, it can indicate excess, as in the bathtub overflowed, I overate, don't overextend yourself. Yeah, it's just that I'm thinking if I have time to discuss this in detail. Let me go a little bit fast. It's almost 8 o'clock. So we have about 27 minutes left. There's still quite some material to cover. If there is time at the end, I will explain this in more detail. But for now, let's just keep in mind that there is another different use of the preposition over that we're simply going to call the excess schema, exemplified by these examples: the bathtub overflowed, I overate, and don't overextend yourself. The explanation is here, but I'd like to move a little bit fast so that I can cover as much as I can today. There is another schema, which is a repetition schema. One of the most common uses of over is to indicate repetition, as in do it over, and we have a whole explanation about that. If time allows, I will come back to these examples, but right now I just want you to notice that there are further more examples of uses of the preposition over, do it over. And so this is our let's say final figure, 18.27. Oh, and there are some metaphorical senses. You remember that we already discussed very briefly. I apologize that 100 minutes per meeting is really nothing, but at least I hope that I was able to give you a general sense of what metaphors, conceptual metaphors, are all about in cognitive linguistics. You can go back and review everything that we discussed on our website here in section number 2, metaphors and metonymies. So there are some metaphorical senses of the preposition over. For instance, she has a strange power over me. So let me ask somebody. Teacher Lupita, what do you think of this example? Why do you think we say that it is metaphorical?
Well, she's a strange power over me is something not, how could I say, imaginary.
Yeah.
Or something magic or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some influence.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. In all the previous examples, there was some kind of physical, concrete, tangible entity that you could touch. But
yes.
A strange power, where is that strange power? Is it in front of me, behind me, above me, next to me? Yeah. Well, it's saying over me. That's true, but it is metaphorical because that power is not really visible, tangible as a concrete entity. And there is a whole explanation about it. Control is up, lack of control is down. But if I wanted to explain what we mean by control is up and lack of control is down, I would have to go back to our discussion of metaphors and metonymies. And well, that would, of course, exceed by a lot the time that we have left for today. But let's just keep it at let's just keep it at the, let's just say that it is a metaphorical use of the preposition over. Another example, Sam was passed over for promotion. Choosing is touching. And below, there are two more examples. You have overlooked his accomplishments. Yeah, overlook is like ignore. So you've overlooked his accomplishments, metaphorical. We need to find someone who can oversee, like supervise these operation. All right, so this is our final, oh yeah, this is the end. Well, I would like to use 10 or 15 minutes to discuss just a little bit. I mean, 15 minutes is not very much, but so-called present perfect. Of course, I will not be able to fully explain everything that I would like to say about the present perfect, but I would like to use, because this is our last meeting, in this seminar, as we were discussing on our WhatsApp group. I have to speak with the academic secretary of my high school in order to see if she can authorize a continuation of this seminar into a workshop where we can develop practical materials that we're able to use with our students in the day-to-day life of a teacher. Because yeah, you're not going to use these. You could, but if we want to be, more communicative based, if we want to deploy communicative based sequences and all that stuff that we love to do as EFL teachers, of course, this is not really the best way to do so. And I would like to have a workshop in which we can actually discuss how to develop didactic materials that take into account all these complexities that we have been discussing. But before I move to so-called present perfect, does anybody have any question about the preposition over or anything that we have discussed today? Meanwhile, I'm going to open my.
Okay, well, I would just like to comment.
Yep.
That many of the examples that we really analyzed,
yeah,
they are phrasal verbs, really.
Phrasal verbs.
They're really phrasal verbs. Many of them, many. And phrasal verbs is not exactly focusing of the meaning of the preposition, but the combination of the two words that not necessarily have the same meaning as the verb and the preposition together. For instance, put over, which means extinguish. It doesn't have anything to do with the over or you know, and that's what I mean is they are really phrasal verbs, and that's why we call them phrasal verbs.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. To be very honest, I think I am not prepared to adequately discuss the topic of phrasal verbs. I would have to go back to my books and papers that I read years ago about this discussion. But what I remember is that that the difference between a simple verb with a preposition and a phrasal verb is that for a phrasal verb to be considered a phrasal verb, there has to be a change of meaning such that you cannot get to that meaning from simply the meaning of the elements that compose the phrasal verb. For example, break down. When you say break down in the sense that it doesn't work anymore, you could say my car broke down, or my cell phone broke down, or my laptop broke down. It doesn't mean that the laptop went to the floor or that my car fell somewhere. It simply means that it stopped operating, that it doesn't work anymore. So that's more or less what I remember right now. There is a difference between constructions in which you simply have a verb and a preposition indicating the direction of the action. For example, go up, the way that I am defining this problem is not a phrasal verb, because go up literally means to move in the direction of up. But broke down is not a literal meaning of breaking something and then putting it on the floor or something like that. So that's more or less what I can remember about the discussion of phrasal verbs. But I know that the discussion of phrasal verbs is much more complicated than simply stating that for a phrasal verb to be a phrasal verb, there has to be a change of meaning such that you cannot arrive at that meaning by simply extracting the meaning from the elements of the phrasal verb, which is the verb and the preposition. In fact, there is a difference between, that's the part that I don't remember very well right now, but my teacher Ricardo, I haven't talked to you about teacher Ricardo, but teacher Ricardo was my thesis advisor, and he was a student of Ronald Langacker. And well, he's a big, high-profile researcher in cognitive linguistics. And he used to tell us that there is a difference between particle, and I don't remember, that's what I need to go back and read again. But he used to talk about a strong difference between particles and probably prepositions or markers. I don't remember very well that anymore. So I wouldn't like to give an explanation that is most probably halfway the truth. But that's more or less the issue. So if we analyze these examples, the painting is over the mantle, the plane is flying over the hill, she's walking over the hill, she lives over the hill, the wall fell over. Probably fall over is somewhere in the middle between the direction of the movement and probably some kind of phrasal verb construction. Sam turned the page over. Yeah, probably in the middle. I don't know. But I still feel like this is literal. Sam turned over. Because we don't have any context, we don't really know what this means. Maybe it simply means that he fell down or something, which would make it more literal. She spread the tablecloth over the table. Well, spread over. I'm not sure if I could consider that a phrasal verb, because as I was saying, I just need to read again everything about particles and prepositions and markers, and it's a quite complicated issue. The guards were posted all over the hill. I think this is quite literal. The play, this is more metaphorical, but this is of course not a phrasal verb at all, because it is separated, but is. Well, do it over, do over. Yeah, this sounds more like a phrasal verb. Do it over. Do it over. Yeah. Yeah. Now you're making me think that maybe phrasal verbs are just metaphorical extensions of literal uses of the but I don't know. I'm just thinking out of the thin air. But don't overdo it. Look over my corrections. That sounds quite literal to me. And don't overlook any of them. That sounds more.
Well, don't worry about that, because we're losing a lot of time trying to figure out the phrasal verbs.
Yes,
so don't worry about that. It was just a thought that I had. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So let's continue with the present perfect, that I am very interested in what you want to say about that.
Yeah, let me show you. Just let me remember where I left those images. Well, I have actually, I in fact have some videos that I once already shared, and I'm going to show you now. Just let me open them. But it's a quite interesting in this topic, that the one that we were trying to solve. But yeah, I'll keep it in mind for the future. Now, let me go to my library. Library here. And then I have to go to here, my channel, playlists. Yeah, here. Videos, home. Sorry, just give me 1 minute and I'll here, playlists. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so I have these videos that I'm going to show you. I have to share here. Yeah, here. So I will later send you these these videos. It's a playlist with 4 different videos in which I try to explain. This is something that I designed last year in August. Well, I started doing this much earlier before, but I uploaded this to YouTube on August 10th. And so here I try to explain the nature of so-called present perfect. And well, don't pay attention to this very much right now, because that's just a sort of general introduction to the fact that we have many different constructions in English. And here I'm just trying to make you all think about the fact that we have retrospective actions. That is to say that we can talk about the past in a way that it is a sort of retrospection, but we can also try to think about what is going on around us. And that's what I call perispection, or simply perspective. You can look around yourselves right now and try to think about what is going on. And you can also think about the future. And I like to think about the future as a sort of prospection, such that we have retrospection, perispection, and prospection, or in other words, perspective, retrospective, and prospective. That's what I try to explain in this first video. If we go to the second video here, well, one more time, because these are materials that I designed for my students, I tried to be as clear and to make it as understandable as possible. So in order to talk about present perfect, I really have to make sure that I understand that I am able to make an analysis of the past as a sort of retrospection, something that has happened before. It is a way of looking back into the past, which is the opposite of a prospection, which is looking into the future. And here I try to help everyone think about time metaphorically. Try to think of time as a path, something that Daniel Casasan sorry, Daniel Casasanto already discussed with us some time ago. And well, sometimes we can clearly see what is coming in the future. Sometimes we are not very sure what's coming our way in the future, but we have some perspective of what is ahead of us. That's what I'm just trying to show here, with the long-term future, the mid-term future, and the short-term future. Now let's go to the third video. Remember that these are 4 different videos, and I'm just trying to give the general context at the beginning in the first 2 videos. So now here, so I'm just trying to make sure that we separate prospection from retrospection and perispection. So yeah, prospection we already talked about, but here it is. Here is the interesting part in order to talk about present perfect. So what happens with retrospection? In retrospection, you stop and look back. So you try to think about your life or something that you were doing today in the morning or during this week. Metaphorical speaking, you put the past into perspective. Here, you put the past into perspective. You look behind your back, metaphorically speaking. That's what I call retrospection. These are all images that try to evoke the fact that we are able to look back into the past. So that's retrospection. But just a second. Okay, so here I have some examples of so-called present perfect. Present perfect is a terrible, horrible, very bad term that we should all stop using because it's really confusing. I'll let you know why. Examples. Have you stayed, well, because these are materials for my students, I give them these examples. Have you stayed at home as much as possible during the pandemic? How many months? And so here I have the first example. Have you stayed at home all these months? Oops, there. So you can think about this question, about the question whether you have stayed at home as much as possible for a different amount of periods of times. You can say that you have stayed at home from February to July, or you could say that you have stayed at home from November to July. Or you could say that you have stayed at home for only 3 months. So there's actually quite much variation as to how much we mean, how much time we have in mind when we say that we have stayed at home as much as possible. Another example, many people have stayed home for 5 months. So it could be 1 month or 3 weeks or 1 year or 2 years. Let's hope it's not 2 years, but it could be even that much. But I hope that you start noticing a pattern. Another example, I have stayed home for, this is a retrospection. I am having a perspective, a global, that's a key word. So this is retrospection. It's a global view, perspective of the past. This shouldn't be here, not only because we're looking back. I should have erased that point on the right side. Which is what we call maximal retrospection. Looking back in time, examples. Examples that are not necessarily pointing to months of time. For example, I have washed my hands every day. So putting everything put into perspective, that's the way it has happened. I have put on a face mask every time I have gone out. I have respected social distancing all this time, when exactly doesn't really matter because it's a perspective. I have looked for information about COVID-19 many times. I have stayed in contact with friends and family via WhatsApp. So keep in mind that this is a perspective. I have done my homework online. How many times? Well, doesn't really matter because it's a general global perspective or view. I have helped. I have watched videos, educational videos in YouTube. I have watched movies with my parents at home. So it's a general global mental view of the past. I have listened to my favorite music. I have played video games. I have shared memes, and so I'm trying to give as many examples as possible of how we can create a perspective, a global general view of the past. And I have cooked delicious meals at home with my parents. Okay, so this is just the first. These are just the first examples. But now let's see what the conceptual structure of so-called present perfect is. So yeah, present perfect is not a good term. Why it's not a good? Because first of all, wait, sorry. What we do with so-called present perfect is to attain a global retrospection or a maximal retrospection or even retrospective. This is a very technical term that I like to use, but I would have to explain what I mean by projections, but I hope it's more or less understandable. Retrospective projections frame are much better terms. So I will call it right now a retrospective past for now. So from the last video, this is retrospection. It is a perspective of the past, looking back in time. You have remember that you have a global vision. That's what you gotta keep in mind, that you have a global vision of what has happened over the last minutes, weeks, months, years, millions of years, billions of years. You have a global vision. That's what you get with so-called present perfect. Compare this. Now let's compare this with simple past. Simple past does not have or offer a global vision. Let's compare. Simple past is not about having a global view or retrospection of the past. It's all about condensation. Very similar to what I discussed with you all when we talked about the future with will. Examples. I washed my hands in the morning. So I think this first example should make it very clear that you don't have a global view of everything you did during the morning. You are condensing your in one single point in time, something that happened at that single point in time. You washed your hands in the morning, somewhere in the morning, sometime in the morning, but you don't really care about thinking of everything that happened during the morning. You don't have this retrospective stance or position. All the morning, no, only at one point. It is not global. It is just one little point in time. Let's wait. I should have made this run faster, but I was worried that my students were able to understand everything. So, oops, very long. Two more examples. I called my friend Emma at 7 a.m. That is not a global view. It's not a retrospective stance or view. It is just one little point in time, which happened to be at 7 o'clock a.m. I watched that movie in April, so I don't really care. With simple past, I don't really care about the global overview of the whole time under discussion. Compare this with the retrospective stance. Stance is like position, from where you are looking at something, or global field of view. The rain has not stopped in all day. Now, this is very different from simple past, because what you are getting is a general view, a global view of what has happened today. What has happened today? Well, today has been raining, or has rained all day long. Today has not stopped the rain. I have not seen her today. So I am thinking about, I am trying to run through my head all the time of today. And I say, well, I have not seen her today. But it's a global view or perspective. Have you called your mom yet? So during the morning, afternoon, or evening, have you called your mom? Maybe after this meeting, you will say, oh yes, I have to call my mom. I have not called my mom all day long, or all week, or all year. I have written 20 emails this week. It's a global perspective. It has rained a lot this month. During 4 weeks, it has rained a lot. It's a global perspective. I have written 3 letters this month. These have happened at different times, but what is important is that you have a global view of time. I have watched that movie 20 times in my life, so you can stretch time as much as you want. You can talk about a few minutes, a few hours, a few days, a few weeks, a few months, a few years, or many years. That's dependent upon the situation. Have you ever visited England ever in your life? To put your life into perspective. Doctors have cured many deadly diseases. So you can talk about centuries into perspective, a global perspective of time in terms of centuries. Doctors have cured many deadly diseases. Patrick has just left the building. It could be just a few seconds ago. You don't know exactly when. What matters is that you have a global view of the last, let's say, 60 seconds or so. I have stayed home for 6 months. You have a global perspective of what has happened. So that's what's most important about so-called present perfect. Present perfect is not about being perfect, and it's not about the present time. That's the biggest mistake with present perfect, that everybody is saying, yes, present perfect refers to an action that happened in the past and has consequences in the present. Yes, it can have consequences into the present. Yes, it can have consequences, but that's not what makes it be what it is. The most important semantic trait or characteristic of this retrospective frame is that you are looking at the past in a global perspective. It is a retrospection of the past. Think about it this way. If I say, I broke my ankle this morning, that has consequences right now. If I say that I broke my hand or my ankle or whatever in the morning, I had an accident, that has consequences right now. So those definitions of present perfect defined as in typical commercial grammars as actions in the past that have consequences in the present, I'm sorry to say it, but those are useless definitions. They don't help. We need a better understanding, a much better understanding of grammar. And that's what I'm trying to do with these materials, to offer a conceptual basis that is more realistic with what is really what is going on with the language. And I think a better way to think about present perfect, we shouldn't even call it present perfect. I haven't really found a term that I think it could substitute present perfect, but I like simply to call it a retrospective projections frame, because that's what we're doing. We are projecting a retrospection over the past, and you probably noticed that I used the preposition over several times, and I do think there is a little connection between what we discussed today about the preposition over and so-called present perfect or the retrospective projections frame. But I already ran out of time. It's already 8:23. I also hope that you noticed that there must be a prototype of this construction, and there are marginal examples. But I ran out of time. We might discuss that in the workshop if you decide to join. I still have to talk to my authorities to see if I get the authorization to open a workshop. But well, that's what it is. It's already 8:23. If you have to go, you are free to go. I don't want to distract you from your family or anything important you have at home. I'm just going to stay 2 or 3 more minutes to answer any questions that anybody who has time to stay. If you have to go, please go. I don't want to cause any troubles at home. But that would be all for today. I will only stay for 3 or 5 more minutes in case anybody wants to comment anything about anything, either in general terms about this seminar or about today. Yeah, I don't want to be rude and just say goodbye. So I'll take 3 or 5 more minutes. But if you have to go, please just go so that you don't have troubles with your husband or wife or children or mother or somebody who's at home with you. Or yeah, so I'm open for any questions or comments.
Well, if I may, sorry that there's not a picture of me today. I don't know why. They're
Don't
in
worry.
the Zoom. Yes, and you can see me. But yes, I can see you, and I really want to thank you for this so interesting course that we had, because you know, this is exactly what we don't have the chance to learn. I mean, we the teachers, we don't have the chance to learn when we are taking all the rest of the courses, and especially the grammar courses or the English courses, because first, people think that our level is very basic, you see, and I don't know why they think that we can't understand these explanations about grammar, and it is exactly what I am always looking for, and what I really like about that. I told you that I took a diplomado of cognitive grammar. You didn't know teacher Mary Lane, but she gave us this diplomado, and we even wrote a book, let me tell you. And this is an idea. This is an idea for our next workshop, that we can even publish the exercises that we're gonna figure out, or maybe well, you know, that we're gonna do in the workshop. I am considering that I will be there, and we could even publish them. So well, it's gonna be a very good project, and I really thank you for this wonderful course that you gave us, and very high level, and completely different to what I have taken. Thank you very much, Sergio. You are just wonderful, and I love your level, and I love that you're always trying to look in the bottom of the of the grammar, and of everything, not only the superficial issues that we are tired of listening and listening and listening always to the superficial issues, not only in English, in all the subjects. Okay, but in this, thank you very much. I really want to thank you so much. You're welcome.
Thank you, teacher. Really, I really appreciate your words. Yeah. Oh yeah, teacher Raimundo, please.
I mentioned that I see eye to eye with you on that, because I have the same feeling that I have the same feeling that teacher Kristen, I think, because usually and this is, I think this is a matter that goes even beyond the even beyond language, because doing a little research, I noticed that the teaching profession has been like dwindle along the years, to the fact that nowadays it has become like a more commercial thing rather than a really professional thing, which happens a lot in our country, and we can see that with a simple fact that many people who just know how to speak English are hired to teach English instead of the people who study linguistics, or that even care about linguistics. I really like this seminar, because I realized that I really don't know many things about linguistics, and that you can arrive to many conclusions from many different perspectives. right now, but this one, it really helped me, but because now every time that I'm going to teach a new topic, whether it is vocabulary, whether it is grammar, I try to find like prototypical examples so that it is easier to understand. Even though it might not be the correct options for many people, I do think that it is the easiest way, because you know the prototypes, unfortunately or fortunately, it depends on the from what mirror you're looking at, are the ones that stick to you most of the time. So
Yeah.
Here we have the issue of people not well prepared people on linguistics teaching English, that may have led to this view of commercial grammar, but well, we can still fight and we can do something from ourselves, like just to change this perspective of grammar, because indeed not only grammar, but also many other aspects of language, and not only about English, but also about all of the language that we will ever teach. They deserve more respect than just more respect and more insight than what we have just been doing, like since linguistics became a formal branch of knowledge.
Yeah, yeah. I would like to mention a couple of things of what Teacher Mary Kristen and Teacher Raymond have just commented. The first one is that there is unfortunately an idea in some people that that linguistics is not useful for the teaching of foreign or second languages. Some people say that linguists are not competent to teach languages. And there is some truth to it, because it's true that there are many linguists who just don't care about teaching. Most linguists that I know, in fact, do not care about how to teach a foreign or second language, because they are so busy trying to understand the depths and complexities of human language, that they are not concerned about pedagogical or didactic problems as we are. So that's in fact the number one motive why I about 10 months ago decided to do everything that I could in order to organize these talks or lectures with some world-renowned linguists, to try to find some connection, to try to bridge the gap between the world of linguistics and the world of TESOL. You know, TESOL as teaching English to speakers of other languages. And that's a problem that we have at the moment, that linguists are working on their own somewhere, doing highly theoretical work with no connection to language teaching. And I am not to blame them. I understand that they have a different a sort of interests, and that's quite understandable. But it's at the same time sad that there is no communication, or very little communication between the two fields, between linguists in linguistics and EFL teachers such as ourselves. But not only that, on the other hand, the same way as many linguists do not care about what it takes to learn a foreign language as the way we do. On the other hand, I have noticed that there are some EFL teachers who look down on linguistics, and they say, no, that doesn't help. That's just very theoretical, and we need something more practical. And yes, it's true, we need more practical materials and didactic units and so on and so forth. But at the same time, it's very sad to notice that there is this disregard for linguistics. And let me put it this way. Try to imagine a biologist, a biology teacher who doesn't know anything about biology, but he knows or she knows a lot about pedagogy and didactics. Well, that's great. It's great that that you have a teacher who is studying constructionism and pedagogy and the latest trends about how to teach project-based learning, task-based learning, design. I forgot the term, but design something. There are so many. At the moment, the teaching market has so many different ways of approaching 21st century skills and etc. But try to imagine a biology teacher who is only concerned about how to teach and not concerned about studying her or his own field. That would be very sad. If I had to have a biology teacher who doesn't care about the latest research on biology, I don't know, the nature of a cell, that would be very sad. So that's what I have noticed, that both sides are, to some extent, I am not claiming that everyone is doing it, but to some extent, both sides are disregarding each other's for different reasons. They either don't care or have had probably bad experiences in the past and they don't want to reach out and ask for help, like, hey, you linguists, try help us understand the nature of language better so that we can come up with ways of teaching language better, which is the point that I've been trying to make throughout this seminar, that if I am able to understand the conceptual nature of going to will, the preposition over so-called present perfect, then once I have the theoretical basis, I should be able to come up with better strategies as a didactician or as a pedagogist on how to deploy all that theoretical knowledge into practical lessons for our students. So yeah, that's something that worries me a lot, and it is difficult because there is so much to learn in the linguistics field, and there is also so much to learn within the TESOL research field. I don't know. I'm thinking about Van Patten and Krashen and many other authors that are part of the TESOL research community, and in my view, we need to find this some common ground between the field of linguistics as a highly theoretical field of research and, for lack of a better term, I'm calling it the TESOL community. And my last example of why I think it's very sad that all our attention is at the moment focused on communicative language teaching, which is great. It is great. I love it. I love communicative language teaching theory, but that's a sort of pedagogical theory. It's not a language. That's not going to explain to you everything that we discussed, for example, in this seminar. CLT, communicative language teaching theory, is not concerned about, not usually, there must be exceptions, but typically, prototypically, CLT is not concerned about the conceptual structure, conceptual nature of English as much as we are in the field of linguistics. Let me see. There is a comment here. Thank you, Letty. I'm sorry that I spoke for so long about this issue, but it is probably my number one issue right now, that it is difficult to make people in the TESOL community care about linguistics, and it is difficult to make people in the linguistics field care about what it takes to teach or learn a foreign or second language. Well, I don't want to tire you all with these issues. So does anybody else have something else you would like to share, mention, discuss before we close today's last meeting? Well, it seems, yeah.
No, Sergio, thank you very much for the course.
Thank you, teacher.
Okay, it was really interesting, a little difficult sometimes
Yeah.
to understand, but very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, teacher. Yeah, I by the way, will start working in 1 or 2 minutes once I close today's meeting on, the process of uploading today's meeting to YouTube. Then after 1 hour, I think I can go and trim, cut the first 5 or 10 minutes and probably part of the last minutes. I don't know. But by tomorrow, I don't know, maybe at midday, more or less at 12 o'clock, I should be able to send you the recording of today's meeting in case you want to go through the discussion that we had today. And you have all of the other meetings available on our website so that you can come back and take a look at anything that we discussed in the future. And well, I thank you all for being part of this seminar. I know you already have so many things to do. You are all very busy, and nevertheless, you have made the effort to come and spend some time here. And I really, really, really deeply appreciate the effort that everyone has made in order to be here. So with that, I'll close it there, and I'll keep in touch with everyone. And I hope that we can meet again in our workshop. I just have to talk to my authorities and make it official so that we can make sure that we get a constancia, a certificate of attendance. You will get a certificate of attendance for this seminar. It will be a 30 hours certificate of attendance, and that's what I will be looking for as well for the workshop. Well, thank you all. I hope you have a very nice, I don't know what I should call it, evening or night, because it's, I don't know. I don't know. I'll be thinking about that. If I should say good evening or,
Evening.
Yeah, because it's not like you're going to bed right now, I think. But yeah, thank you so much. I'll keep in touch and thank you so much. I'll keep in touch and thank you all. I'll close the meeting now and thank you.
Thank you, Serge.
Thank you. Thank you, teachers.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Big hug.
I'll see you later, teachers. Thank you so much.
See you.
See you. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, teacher. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Girl.
I learned a lot this seminar. Thank you so much. Bye.
Goodbye.
Take care.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for everything. Bye-bye now.
Goodbye.